Now, there's two great scientific books that actually didn't explore small groups as a solution, but they actually provide the scientific basis that prove why small groups work. I referred to both of them. They're both written by Robert Putnam and his Harvard research team. The first one was called Bowling Alone. The second one was called Better Together. Bowling Alone studied, over 500 organizations of all kinds in America. And I told you, they all started at one point, they grew, they eventually hit a point of inflection, and they disappeared into non-existence. But there were a few that grew, did a little sigmoid curve, and grew a little bit more. And so they really want to know why was that. And that's what led to the case study book, Better Together. Here's what they concluded. They concluded that the key differential between organizations that grow and survive versus those which eventually devolve are social capital. So what's social capital? Social capital is really two things. It's the collective value of everyone you know, your social network, right? So the same example I use is, if you gave me $1, you're $1 poor and I'm $1 richer. But if you gave me everybody in your network and I gave you everybody in my network, we both doubled in network wealth and nobody of us lost anything, right? So creating a social network of everybody we know and everybody who we know knows, and being unified into that network is really one of the most profoundly differentiating propositions that really creates connectedness in our organizations. I'll give you a concrete example. Again, when one of my daughters was off in college, graduate school, and she was stuck in Baltimore, and she called me and said, "Dad, do we still have AAA?" Now, no father of a daughter ever wants that question, do we still have AAA? And I said, "Alexis, what's wrong?" She goes, "My car won't start." And I said, "Well, what's wrong with it?" She goes, "I don't know." And I said, "Do we have AAA?" And I said, "Where are you?" She goes, "I'm in Baltimore." No, I said, "Where in Baltimore are you?" And you know how frustrated kids can be with their parents. You know. I said, "Dad, what difference does it make? You're in Atlanta, I'm in Baltimore." It's like, "Oh, what? Just tell me where you are." She said, "I'm at the intersection of X and Y." I said, "Sit there." And I immediately picked up the phone and I called one of my Orthodox friends in Baltimore. He wasn't there. I called another Orthodox friend in Baltimore. He was there. And I said, "Surely to goodness, you know a reputable mechanic." And he said, "What's the matter?" I said, my daughter's car won't start." And he said, "Where is she?" I knew he was going to ask that question. And so I said, "She's at the intersection of X and Y." And he thought for 2 seconds. He said, "You're not going to believe this. Thanasi's gas station is 7 blocks away. You call your daughter, I'll call Thanasi." In less than 5 minutes, I called my daughter back and I said, "Alexis, Thanasi's on the way." She goes, "Who in the heck is Thanasi?" I said, "It doesn't matter. You can do whatever he tells you to do." 2 hours later, she calls me back. She said, "Dad, you ain't gonna believe it. I'm sitting here in my busted down car. Up comes a wrecker, says Thanasi's on it." He starts my car, and it was amazing, and he wouldn't take any, I tried to give him my credit, he wouldn't take any money. And I said, "You've learned one of the most important lessons I can ever teach you. You have family everywhere you go, and you don't know them, and you're not even connected biologically to them. You're connected spiritually to them. There are Orthodox faithful in every community who will be there for you without you even knowing that you need there. You are part of this global neural network that we are all then connected with." I said, "You don't worry about Thanasi, I'll take care of him." So I called him and said, "Thanasi, Marianne, very much, thank you very much, I take care of Alexis. Let me give you my credit card." And his response was just fascinating to me. He said, "Don't insult me." He said, "Her problem is a little easy problem. I can fix that." He said, "You just do the same thing." In his own way, this humble mechanic was telling me, pay it forward. Do something for someone else who you don't know, who may need it, and stuff like that. This is what social capital is all about. The second element that really defines social capital is the fundamental human desire to do things for other people in our networks that foster reciprocity. If I do something for you, it's been proven over again, you're more likely to want to do something for me or somebody else, right? So it's giving and giving and giving and giving and giving and giving. That's what social capital is about. If you really want a great case study of a group that I think has done small groups better than anybody, happens to be a local big box church here in Atlanta. It's actually the second largest church in America. Not denomination church, it's a single church. They have just under 40,000 members, okay? Andy Stanley's North Point Church. Here was the quote when he was talking about small groups. He said, "Community is so important to your spiritual life because you can't grow spiritually unless you're connected relationally," right? So we've got to be connected relationally to God, to Christ, to each other, to this ecclesia, this group and gathering. There's a whole connection element that allows us to grow spiritually. He said, God designed us that way, and He wants us to use other people to grow you, and He wants to use you to grow other people. This is all part and parcel of this whole stewardship mission. Whatever gifts you have, I don't care what they are, I want you to use them for the benefit of other people and for God's great glory. And guess what? If other people are doing the same thing, sometimes you'll be the beneficiary, sometimes you're actually giving. When you look at the power of small groups, he actually did a great video, and I recommend if you really want to get a small little thing, he's called it Circles Are Better Than Rows. It was a cute play on words. He was saying that a small group is better, that's a small group, a circle, even than in the pew, sitting in the pew, because so much is going to happen associated with that. And if you want to see some great examples of how that works, I'll give you two. Back to the book Rebuilt at Roman Catholic Parish in Timonium, Maryland. They adopted a small group ministry. It's in chapter 9. You can read all about it. Completely transformed the whole relationships within that parish and how they connected with each other. And there's a second example that's really effective, and it's in a different book called Divine Renovation. This is written, interestingly enough, by another Roman Catholic priest. He's up in Canada, and he did the same thing. He took his parish and completely revised it and turned it around. And one of the essential elements they used was small groups. And because of the size of his parish, they also created something called mid-sized groups, and he explains the difference. And if you look at pages 168 through 176, then you can go to it. And I like the quote that he used at one point in the book. He said, "The bigger a parish is, the smaller it must become." The bigger the parish is, the smaller it must become. Otherwise, it's too easy to lose that connection with each other and relationally and become caught and so that's a big challenge. Not so much in the Orthodox Church, more in the GOA and most of the other Orthodox jurisdictions which don't have as large parishes. But as our parishes get bigger, whatever size you're on, you need to be thinking about that relationally. And here's something that I'm going to flip through very quickly. There's about 30 different articles, resources you can look at in small groups. I'm not going to spend any time on them. I pray and I hope that you will engage in a small group ministry, and you can look at any of these resources. Eventually, by the grace of God, I hope to have Orthodox resources that I can tie in there. We're just not quite there yet. So in the meantime, I'm giving you some best-in-class small group ministry things. Okay, we're almost done. So the last 2 ones is, number one is creating a small group ministry is the last one we talk about. Last one we're going to talk about is the team. The team. Now, this is where we drop the ball miserably in stewardship ministry in the Orthodox Church, right? When I say who's the team, usually one person raises their hand, and whoever's arm they can twist, right? And sometimes they say, well, the priest is the team, right? And that's the only team, stuff like that. We really don't have a team. So I started looking at it saying, how can we effectively do anything we want to do unless we have a team, right? But the scripture passage that I think captures the importance of a team far better than anything, and one I used in my coaching ministry and stuff like that, is this one from Ecclesiastes. And listen to what it says, because I think it's really powerful. Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. And then listen how it ends. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. I mean, that's a sad state of affairs. We are all part of a big team. We all carry the Orthodox jersey. Okay, that's great. We're all Christians. Okay, that's great. But in a smaller sense, we are members of a parish. We're members of a ministry. And I really want you to think about it in the context of a stewardship team. So let's talk about a stewardship team. You really need to be focused on recruiting a group of people. I call them ambassadors. Again, feel free to call them whatever you want to. I would say you're looking for a little bit more than 10% of the number of families. It should be the size of your stewardship team. So if you have 300 families, you should have a stewardship team of no less than 30. If you have 400, 40. If you have 75, no less than 7.5. But I round it up to get half people don't really do a good job, so I go to 8. Okay. So, and why do I say 10%, a minimum of 10%? Because it's real simple. If I take care of myself and 9 other people, then I've got 10%, I've got 10 people taken care of. And if I've got 10 people taken care of, and we have the same number of people taken care of by the other 10%, we've got 100% of people taken care of. So the math actually works out for itself. Each ambassador takes care of himself and solicits 9 other stewards. Now, how do we get to 10%? Because I talk to enough people, oh my gosh, I can think of how I'm going to get to 15, 30 members on my stewardship committee. My first question, how many in your parish council? Oh, well, there's 15 on my parish council. Oh, well, there's your first 15 members. And you're the priest, that's 16, right? And by the way, everybody participates because we started by building an engaged strategy where we were all engaged in the process. And so if you're a member of parish council, this is a part of your ministry responsibility. Okay, so we started with 16 in my hypothetical example. How many ministries do you have? We have another 15 ministries. Okay, the ministry head for each one of those, that gets you over 31. You're already there. And that's before we actually start to recruit other people who would be really good at the stewardship ministry, right? So it's really not as hard as you think, but you actually got to go through the recruitment effort. So parish clergy and all the ministry heads are ambassadors, and then you actually have to train the ambassadors on how and what to solicit. Because their natural instincts are going to be, I ain't talking to anybody about money. That's just a natural instinct. I get it. I'm okay with that, but the vast majority of people are uncomfortable with it. So we don't want them to talk about money, because quite frankly, if they do, they're going to screw it up. So let's not get them to do what they're going to do poorly. You're going to have to train them on how you go about doing that. And we actually have materials. Some of my videos will do that for you if you want. Okay. Some team members need to be in charge of a few functions. Communications is one of them. You need to have one of your stewardship member that's really good at communications. That includes thanking people, messaging, letters. You have to have somebody that provides updates to the parish. So it's got to be somebody who's comfortable providing those kind of updates. They have to have somebody who's briefing the parish council. Now, if you have a council of ministries, by definition, whoever your parish council member is, whose liaison to the stewardship ministry is getting that briefing. And finally, at least one and only one trusted member has to have actual access to the detailed financial pledges. That requirement to look at who's doing what under the circumstances. And you have to have somebody with impeccable integrity that will keep that information confidential. So one of the things that people asked me was, well, if you were building the dream team for stewardship, build me your dream team. So I actually did it for you here. So here we go. Here are the 10 positions in a stewardship committee. Now, you may not have one person, you may have one person serving multiple functions, but there's at least 10 discrete functions that need to be served if you're going to have an effective stewardship team. You need a team leader, somebody to get the project started, somebody who's responsible ultimately. There need to be somebody in charge of communications, somebody in charge of welcoming. So the welcoming ministry is ultimately a part of the stewardship ministry, because that's an integral interface. That's where we're first touching with our stewards. So your welcoming ministry leader. The thanking ministry leader, remember we talked about how that's a whole ministry. Clearly thanking is an integral part of stewardship. The small group ministry leader. So if you don't have a small group ministry, shame on you. If you don't have a small group ministry, I hope you get one. You need a stewardship campaign leader. There's somebody who's responsible for the arc of the year-long campaign. Remember the quarterly homilies, the monthly messaging, the actual days of the campaign, the ministry fairs, so that's the campaign part. The planned giving leader, if you don't have somebody who's responsible for planned giving, it's never going to start by itself, so that's a part of your leadership team. Your youth stewardship leader, somebody who's focused on making sure that we have an effective youth stewardship program. An ambassador training leader, someone that's going to take the solicitors and make sure that they're properly trained on what we do and how we're doing it, what we're not doing, is there to answer questions when hiccups happen, where people leave and move, and whatever the case may be, somebody that's running that process. And finally, the data analysis person. Somebody who's going to sit there and look at all the metrics of what we're accomplishing. And there's a lot of metrics that you're not measuring, right? So, for example, you should have, I mentioned one of you is your scatter plot. How many donors do you have in each $100 increment? Well, that's one thing you would look at. So let me ask you this. Do you know how many people increased their pledge this year compared to last year? How many decreased their pledge this year compared to last year? How many kept them the same this year to last year? What percentage was the median increase? What's the percentage median decrease? What's our median get? There's a whole bunch of metrics and data associated with this. How many people did we reach? How long did it take to reach it? We reached 100% of our stewards. It took us 2.5 months. Next year we reached 100% of our stewards. It took us 2 months. Okay, we're going in the right direction, right? There's 1,001 things you can measure, but somebody's actually got to be involved and responsible for measuring. So this is my dream team category of the 10 people that you need to have on your stewardship team. But ultimately, you're responsible for recruiting and training a full stewardship team to perform all the various activities and functions associated. Okay, so you've been very patient, you've been very kind, so let's do some last minute conclusions. Big idea today. I started with one big idea, and I want to make sure that big idea stays with you. It's all about engagement. It is absolutely all about engagement. Engagement, engagement, engagement. Engagement in everything. Engagement in sacramental life, engagement in liturgical life, engagement in ministries, engagement in services, engagement in stewards, engagement in financial matters. There's nothing about which engagement isn't the answer to the problem, right? So it's really all about engagement. We summarize the data that's in your package and in your hymnals that I bludgeon people with about all the things that are happening. Our membership declining, our sacraments are declining, our contributions declining, our spirituality declining, our engagement is declining. Everything's going in the wrong direction. All the data is going in the wrong direction. I'm not a half-empty kind of guy. I'm a opportunity kind of guy. So I look at this and say we have the greatest opportunity in front of us since sliced bread. Just 2 days ago, the Pew Forum came out with their new study on global orthodoxy. And they did a measurement of all the global. I really highly recommend it. I'm going to have it up on my website shortly, the link. And when you look at it, the numbers are not going in the right direction. And everybody's panicking and woe is me, and they start arguing about whether we calculated it right. And I'm just saying this is a great opportunity for us, okay? But here's the way you have to look at it. So the former chairman and CEO of General Electric, Jack Welch, once said, if the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, the end is near. And think about that. And so the rate of change of the world around us, the rate of change of demography around us, the rate of change of perspectives around us. I was talking with one of the senior researchers for the Christian, the group that does more Christian research than just about anybody. And I said, don't go to 10,000 feet or 50,000 feet, go to 100,000 feet, tell me what's the big thing? And she looked at me without hesitating. She said, about 6 or 7 years ago, we reached a tipping point in America with regard to religion. I said, what do you mean? She goes, about 6 to 7 years ago, and again, it varies depending on what you're measuring, people's views changed on social issues that were contrary to the position taken by churches. And you start to look at it. And you can see all kinds of demographics. I'm not taking a political fight here. I'm just telling you, within that period of time, a majority of Americans thought abortion was okay. A majority of Americans thought death penalty was bad. A majority of Americans thought we have climate change. A majority of Americans thought same-sex marriage is okay. It doesn't matter what issue you pick. There's all these things changing dynamically, and they're happening around us. So the rate of change on the outside is moving very fast. And I'm not changing the fundamental tenets of our theology. I think Christ got it right, if I can be very disrespectful. Clearly he got it right. But how we live it and practice it and survive it and present it and integrate on it is absolutely changing around us. Jack Welch finally actually put a fine exclamation point when he finally said, change before you have to. So when we look at that responsibility of engagement, Christ challenged us very clearly, and he didn't just challenge the 12 apostles, he challenged all of us to go, first action word, and make, second action word, disciples, which he defined by their action of love, and then of all nations. That's our job description. That's your job description, that's my job description. Now, where and what our mission fields are may differ, right? But don't ever think you wake up any day of your life and you don't have a responsibility to go and make disciples of Jesus Christ in your mission field. And through the course of the research and the time that I've been able to spend on this, the 4 dimensions of an effective church are having engaged disciples who are practicing a culture of true stewardship in pursuit of a consensus vision and a plan for the parish, all unified by an effective worship experience. That's the dynamic of an effective church. Today, we focus on just one of those dimensions, the culture of true stewardship. As I said before, if you go to stewardshipcalling.com, you can see content on the other 2 of the 3. The last thing I kind of want to leave in this sequence over here is to remind you that we have 4 different categories of Orthodox Christians in American Orthodox churches today. We have the incidental cradles, the intentional cradles, the incidental converts, and the intentional converts. Their strategy, our strategies have to be a little bit different to meet their needs. And so we can't just approach it with the traditional one-size-fits-all. Different church when we were all immigrants to this country from wherever we came from. And we can just band it one thing. We now have 4 different, very different constituencies that require different things. All of the content that you saw today is that you can download it in 2 places. One is on my website, stewardshipcalling.com. It's always free and there's no click-through, so I'm not getting compensated for this. If you go to the Stewardship tab, this entire presentation can be downloaded, including the slides we didn't cover. In addition, if you go to the Atlanta Strategic Planning portal, atlstrategicplan.org, under completed materials, you can find the entire Igniting the Flame stewardship program that we saw today. Lastly, if you're really interested in a stewardship ministry, and if you're not, pass this on to somebody else, there's the program, the podcast that I offer in Ancient Faith Radio right now is the 5th Sunday program. Every month it has a 5th Sunday from 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. I do a 1.5-hour live internet radio call-in program. Father Ron Powell is my co-host. And there are 4 months in 2018 that have a 5th Sunday. So April 29th, July 29th, September 30th, and then I don't know if we're going to do one on December 30th, but why not? I mean, this year it's December 31st, so I don't know if you got any New Year's Eve plans, but I probably will be broadcasting live, so you can call in and revelry. But what I really want to focus your attention on with regard to stewardship is starting in 2018, again, using Ancient Faith Radio and my Stewardship Calling podcast, I'm going to be doing a weekly 15-minute podcast just on elements of the stewardship ministry, right? So they'll all be out there available. If you're interested, you can tie them. They're archived on my website, Stewardship Calling. Ancient Faith Radio archives them on theirs. It doesn't matter how you access it. In addition to that, and this is what I am actually soliciting for, I'm going to try and do a 1-hour live interactive Zoom web conference once a month for people interested in stewardship, where there's going to be about 20 minutes of content and then 40 minutes of Q&A and discussion and sharing, okay? If you're interested in participating, or you know anybody else that's interested in participating, email me at bill@stewardshipcalling.com. The first 99 people, we have so many people, the first 99 people that sign in for any one of them can participate, okay? And there'll be new content that's presented each time, okay? So this is the opportunity that each of us have when we realize it's all God's to begin with. We are just temporary, short-term stewards preparing ourselves for an eternal life, hopefully of graciousness. So we all received without paying, and now it's our opportunity to give without being paid. And what a wonderful opportunity that is. I remind you of Rick Warren's statement. Church leaders are either risk takers, caretakers, or undertakers. Look, I don't know about you, but when I go before the Lord and He asks me whatever He asks me, I don't want to be responsible for being an undertaker in any parish that I have the opportunity to do something about. A few last little pieces of inspiration. There's an inspiration guy, Jim Rohn, who once said, your life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better by change. And that was that second principle we talked about. You're never going to engage until you change something. So what are you willing to change in your life daily to make it better? There's another inspiration guy by the name of Harvey McKay who once put an interesting perspective on it. He said, a dream is just a dream, but a goal is a dream with a plan and a deadline. So when you can actually create a plan and a deadline, now you've got a goal. If any of the stewardship messaging or materials is going to resonate or make a difference in your life, it's going to be because you turn in just a dream into an actual goal that has a dream, a plan, and a deadline. I remind you of the words we started with Mahatma Gandhi's, you have to be the change you wish to see in the world. It's easy to talk about the changes that need to happen. The question is, what are you doing about it? And then that really smart German guy that I like, Albert Einstein, once said, logic will get you from A to B. Imagination will take you everywhere. He said, imagination is more important than knowledge. And isn't that really amazing from a guy who's always attributed for being so smart? But for him, some of his intellect and ability, what he was really saying was, look, I mean, this knowledge stuff, yeah, that's okay. But it's the imagination. So what I'm asking you to think about, why I put this up here, is imagine a future for your parish that's different than its current status. Imagine a future for the ministry you love most that's different. Imagine a difference for you in your life that's different than what you have right now. There's great wisdom that came from my favorite old Chinese proverb that said the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Folks, I can't do anything about your misspent youth. Those stupid boneheaded things you and I both did when we were young, man, that's gone. Nothing we can do about that. But today, we can plant that tree that we may see the future, we may not see the future. And then my last one, this is kind of one of the most inspirational, it's got to be my entire legal career, and it's since then. Either lead, follow, or get out of the way. And it's attributable to a lot of people. Ted Turner and General Patton and Lee Iacocca and Thomas Paine, some goofy lawyer from the South. One of the blessings, we represented Ted Turner in his various organizations. And indeed, Ted Turner had the thing on his desk that said, lead, follow, or get out of the way. What I thought was very striking was it wasn't always facing him. It would face you when you walked in the room sometimes. Right? So the challenge to you is, if you're going to lead, then by all means lead. If you can't lead, that's fine, follow. But do not be an obstructionist. If you can't lead or follow, step aside for a second and let other people go away. The scripture gives us this clear guidance in Matthew 9:37-38, where we're reminded the message to the disciples that the harvest is actually plentiful. There is no dearth of opportunity. There's no dearth of challenges that we can meet. There's no dearth of potential Christians that we can convert. The problem is not the harvest. The problem is the workers. So the admonition was, go find more ministries. No, go find more workers. And that's what this whole stewardship is all about. That's why this is about engagement and change. It's about engaging us and becoming workers in the harvest field. And if you needed the motivation, it's because of what we learned in the liturgy, that one day we will stand before the Maker and we will be asked to account with what we did with all the gifts God gave us. And so the 16th item on your to-do list, even though I promise you there are only 15, is daily. Every day of your life, ask yourself the question, what have I done today to help give myself a good account before the awesome judgment seat of Christ? And if you didn't, then double down tomorrow. But every day ask yourself that question. And by the way, it can be in some of the smallest matters. I hope it'll be in the service of your church. I hope it'll be in the service of some ministry. But it can be you help somebody in some little small way, in some little small motion. And if you will look for the opportunities to help other people, I can't tell you how more enriched your life will be in some of the simplest and smallest and insignificant ways. I'm going to go back to that really smart German guy. And so I like to ask everybody, what was Albert Einstein's greatest contribution? And most times when I ask the question, people come back with the theory of relativity, right? It's that E equals MC squared thing. I was a liberal arts major. I have no idea what that means. So I can't accept that as Albert Einstein's greatest contribution. I actually think Albert Einstein's greatest contribution was when he once said the following. He said, nothing happens until something moves. Nothing happens until something moves. Somebody once tried to explain to me that's what that whole relativity thing was all about. I think Albert Einstein almost got it right. He missed one little thing. And so I'm going to close with the Marianas corollary to Albert Einstein's principle that says, nothing happens until somebody moves. And my brothers and sisters, each and every one of you, each and every one of the people in your family, each and every one of your parish, are those somebodies that have to move because, as we learn in Luke 10:1, we have been called as one of the 70 disciples. And you have the opportunity as a stewards of God's great grace to you to be the most extraordinary steward and the most extraordinary disciple of Jesus Christ. Godspeed on your journey.